After the last bell rang, the corridors of Seishin High School emptied with the same rhythm every day. Shoes sliding against the polished floors, voices fading toward the gates, the faint echo of laughter hanging in the air. But that afternoon, Aiko stood frozen by her locker, hands trembling slightly as she tried to stuff her notebooks inside. Her chest felt tight, as if something inside her wanted to break free, though she couldn't explain why. She had done everything right that day, scored full marks on the math quiz, answered questions with the calm politeness her teachers admired, smiled faintly when her friends praised her handwriting. And yet the moment the silence settled around her, she felt unbearably hollow. It was as if the perfect mask she wore had fused with her skin. Outside, spring sunlight filtered through the sakura branches that lined the schoolyard, scattering petals like pale pink confetti. Students stopped to take photos or laughed as the breeze whipped at their uniforms. Aiko adjusted the strap of her school bag and hurried across the yard, her eyes lowered, hoping to slip through unnoticed. That was when she almost collided with him. Ren leaned casually against the gate, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a cigarette he hadn't even lit. His tie was loose, shirt untucked, blazer missing. He looked like trouble. That was what everyone said. Rumors traveled quickly. He skipped classes, picked fights, barely passed his exams. Teachers sighed when they called his name. Girls whispered when he walked by. Aiko had never spoken to him, never even dared look straight at him. But now, standing only a step away, she couldn't avoid his eyes. They weren't what she expected. Not mocking, not lazy. Just steady, dark, and strangely tired, like he had been carrying something heavier than anyone else could see. "You're in a hurry," he said, voice low but clear. Aiko opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She tightened her grip on the strap of her bag. He tilted his head, smirking slightly. "Relax, I don't bite." Her heart thudded painfully. Everyone else would have turned away, pretending he wasn't there. But she stayed. Maybe it was the way the sunlight caught in his messy hair, or the way he didn't look at her like she was the perfect, quiet honor student everyone else saw. The silence stretched. She bowed quickly, a reflex of courtesy, and tried to walk past. But just as she did, the wind swept through, carrying a flurry of petals that caught in her hair. She struggled to brush them away, awkwardly, almost comical, in her stiff motions. Ren reached out. Without asking, he plucked one of the petals gently from her shoulder. His fingers lingered only for a second, but the touch left her breathless. "Looks better now," he said, stepping back as if nothing had happened. Her cheeks burned. She muttered a faint "thank you" and hurried toward the station, but the weight in her chest had shifted. It wasn't hollow anymore. It was restless, alive. That night, she stared at her desk full of open textbooks, unable to read a single line. Ren's voice echoed in her head, quiet but impossible to ignore. "Relax, I don't bite." For the first time in years, equations and grammar rules felt meaningless compared to the memory of a single fleeting look. And somewhere beyond her window, the city lights flickered like a secret code, as if they knew her life had just taken a turn she could never have planned. The next morning, Aiko tried to convince herself it had been nothing, just a brief moment, a passing word from someone who lived in a different world than hers. She tied her ribbon neatly, checked the length of her skirt, smoothed down her hair. She reminded herself, perfect grades, perfect manners, no distractions. That was who she was supposed to be. But when she stepped through the school gates, her eyes betrayed her. They searched, scanning the yard, the benches, the shadows near the gym. She told herself she was being careful, wary of running into him again. But deep down, she knew she was looking. Ren wasn't there. The day passed in the blur it always did. Teachers spoke. Chalk screeched against the blackboard. Classmates whispered and giggled. Aiko filled her notebook with precise lines of notes, her handwriting even smaller and neater than usual, as if she could control the unease spreading inside her. At lunch, her friends dragged her to the courtyard. They sat beneath the sakura tree, bento boxes spread out, chatter spilling in every direction. Aiko smiled at the right moments, nodded at the right jokes, chewed politely. But her ears pricked when she caught a group of boys nearby, murmuring Ren's name. Skipped again. He'll never graduate like that. Did you hear he got into a fight last week? Some guy from another school. They laughed, shaking their heads. To them, Ren was nothing more than a story, a warning. Aiko lowered her gaze, stabbing at her rice, but her thoughts spun. The boy she'd seen yesterday hadn't looked violent or hairless. He'd looked tired, human. When the final bell rang, she packed her things slowly, waiting until most students had left. Maybe she wanted the hallways empty. Maybe she wanted to linger. She told herself she just needed air. She wandered toward the back of the school, where the bicycle racks stood half empty. And there he was. Ren sat on the low wall, blazer thrown carelessly beside him, a soda can balanced between his hands. He glanced up, as if he'd known she would come. You again, he said. Not mocking, not surprised. Just there. Aiko's breath caught. She should have walked away. She should have bowed politely and gone home. But instead, she found herself standing still. Ren took a sip from the can, then set it down. You don't have to look so scared. I'm not gonna drag you into trouble. Her voice came out softer than she intended. I'm not scared. For the first time, his smile was real, small, crooked, almost shy. Good. Then sit. She hesitated, then lowered herself onto the wall, leaving a careful distance between them. The air smelled faintly of rain. Clouds were gathering above the schoolyard. Neither spoke for a moment. The quiet wasn't heavy, though. It was different. Aiko felt, for the first time in her life, that she didn't need to perform, didn't need to be flawless. Ren leaned back, eyes on the sky. You ever get tired of all this? The rules, the expectations, the masks? Her throat tightened. No one had ever asked her that. She looked down at her hands, fingers twisting in her lap. Every day. His head turned toward her. Their eyes met again, steady and unflinching. And just like before, something shifted inside her, a crack in the walls she had built so carefully. The first drops of rain began to fall, cool against her skin, but neither of them moved. Rain tapped against the metal roof of the bicycle shed, soft at first, then heavier, until the whole yard shimmered under silver threads. Students who had lingered rushed out with their bags over their heads, laughter and shouts echoing as they ran for the station. But Aiko stayed. Her uniform was damp, her hair sticking to her cheeks, yet she didn't move. She felt as if the rain had washed away everything, her perfect posture, her careful smile, the endless pressure of being who everyone expected. For once, she was just a girl sitting beside someone who saw her differently. Ren tilted his head back, letting the drops slide across his face. Feels good, doesn't it? Everyone else hides, but rain doesn't hurt. Aiko glanced at him. You'll get sick. He gave a quiet laugh. I've been sick before. Doesn't matter. His tone was light, but there was an undertone that made her chest ache, as if his words carried scars she couldn't see. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was alive, filled with the sound of rain and the unspoken pull that drew her closer. She surprised herself when she spoke again. Why do you always sit back here? Ren looked at her from the corner of his eye. Because no one looks for me here. Teachers forget. Students don't care. It's the only place I can breathe. Her heart tightened. She thought of her tidy desk at home, her father's stern reminders, her mother's quiet sighs when she slipped below perfection. She thought of all the times she had wished to disappear, if only for a moment, and suddenly she understood him. The rain slowed, fading into a soft drizzle. Ren picked up his blazer, shook the water off half-heartedly, then slung it over his shoulder. He stood, looking down at her. "You should go before you're late. Parents'll worry." Aiko rose too, brushing damp petals from her skirt. She wanted to say something, anything, to keep him there a little longer. Instead, she just nodded. He turned to leave, but after a few steps he stopped. "Hey!" She froze. Ren's voice was quieter this time, almost hesitant. "Thanks for not walking away." Her lips parted, but no words came. He didn't wait for an answer. He shoved his hands into his pockets and disappeared down the side street, leaving her with the echo of his voice and the warmth it lit inside her. That night, she sat at her desk again, books spread before her, but she couldn't see the words. Her heart was too full. She traced his words in her mind, replayed the look in his eyes when he said them. And for the first time in her life, she caught herself wondering what it would be like if she chose her own path, not the one her parents had drawn, not the one her teachers expected, but hers. And she realized with a quiet, terrifying certainty, that path had just begun with him. By the next week, the whispers had grown louder. It started small, a glance in the hallway, a murmur by the shoe lockers. But soon, everyone seemed to know. Aiko had been seen with him, the perfect honor student, walking in the rain beside the boy who was supposed to ruin everything he touched. In class, she felt the weight of it pressing down. Her friends sat a little farther from her desk. Their conversations clipped when she approached. Teachers looked at her longer than usual, as if waiting for her to slip. Even her homeroom instructor cleared his throat before saying, "Collins, don't get distracted this semester." She bowed her head obediently, but her hands shook under the desk. At home, it was worse. Her father spotted the damp hem of her skirt one evening, and his voice cut sharper than the knife he used on his dinner. "You're staying out too late, and you're not walking with those boys, are you?" His words weren't questions, they were warnings. Aiko mumbled a soft, "No," and her mother glanced away, pretending not to hear the lie. The next day, she avoided Ren. She left the classroom quickly, hurried past the bike racks, even took the longer route to the station. But her chest burned with every step, like she was betraying something fragile and real. It didn't last. 2 days later, he was waiting at the vending machine by the gym. When she saw him, her pulse jumped painfully. She should have turned, but he spoke before she could move. "Is it true?" His tone was steady, but his eyes searched hers. "That you're ashamed of being seen with me?" The words pierced deeper than she expected. She shook her head, voice trembling. "I'm not. It's just, everyone is talking. My father." Ren stepped closer, close enough that she could smell rain still clinging to his uniform. "Let them talk. Let them choke on it. Why should we care?" Her throat tightened. She wanted to believe him, to drown in his certainty. But the fear inside her screamed louder, "Because I'll lose everything." For a moment, silence. Then his voice dropped, softer than she had ever heard. "So will I, if you walk away." Her eyes stung. The vending machine hummed beside them, the air heavy with everything unsaid. And then, before she could think, before she could weigh the cost, she whispered the words she had been holding back. "I don't want to lose you." Ren's expression broke. No smirk, no mask, only raw relief. His hand brushed hers, hesitant but real, and she let her fingers curl into his. The school bell rang in the distance, but neither moved. In that moment, against the hum of the machine and the fading echo of voices, they had chosen each other. Even if the world was already preparing to tear them apart, the storm broke sooner than they expected. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, when the air was heavy with summer heat and the sky pressed low, thick with clouds. Aiko and Ren had slipped out of class early, walking side by side along the narrow street behind the school. Their hands brushed once, twice, before finally intertwining, small rebellions hidden in plain sight. They didn't notice the eyes. By evening, the whispers had turned into certainties. Aiko's phone buzzed endlessly, messages from classmates, questions laced with mockery. Is it true? You and him? Others didn't bother hiding their disgust. The honor student and the delinquent. How romantic. When she reached home, her father was waiting. He stood in the doorway with her phone in his hand, the screen glowing with the words she hadn't dared delete. His voice was low, shaking with restrained fury. You will explain this. Her knees felt weak. She tried to speak, but her mother's silence cut deeper than his anger. No defense would be enough. That night ended in slammed doors and suffocating quiet. The next day at school, she found Ren leaning against the gate, arms folded, jaw tight. His eyes met hers, but there was no smile this time, only the weight of everything crashing down on them. They know, he said simply. She nodded. Her throat was raw, her body exhausted from a night of muffled sobs. They called my guardian, Ren continued, bitterness sharpening his voice. Said I'm a bad influence, that I'm dragging you down. He spat the words like poison, then laughed without humor, as if I wasn't already trash to them. Don't say that, Aiko whispered. She wanted to touch him, to hold him, but the crowd of students streaming past made her freeze. Every glance burned, every whisper cut. Ren noticed her hesitation. His eyes darkened, but he didn't move away. Instead, he stepped closer, lowering his voice. I told you I don't care what they say. I only care if you believe it. Her heart ached. She wanted to shout, to tell him she believed in him, in them, so more than anything. But before she could, a teacher's voice snapped through the air. Collins, Takahashi, inside, now. The command was final. Their hands dropped apart. As they followed the teacher into the building, side by side, yet impossibly far apart, Aiko realized something with terrifying clarity. This was the test, the moment where the world would decide for them, unless they found the strength to fight back. They sat across from each other in the counselor's office, the ticking clock on the wall, louder than any voice. Aiko's palms were damp against her skirt, her back rigid against the chair. Ren leaned back, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the ceiling like he couldn't care less. But she knew him well enough now. He cared. The counselor spoke slowly, as if delivering a sentence. This cannot continue. Collins, your grades are excellent. Your future is bright. Do not let unnecessary distractions jeopardize that. And Takahashi, the pause was sharp, deliberate. You already stand on the edge of suspension. Consider what this looks like. Ren didn't answer. Aiko opened her mouth, but her voice stuck in her throat. The silence grew unbearable. Finally, the counselor sighed, sliding a paper across the desk. I will be informing your parents. For now, I suggest you keep your distance. They were dismissed separately. Aiko walked down the hallway, every step echoing like judgment. Ren followed a few paces behind, but neither spoke until they reached the back exit. Distance, he muttered, his voice like broken glass. That's what they want. For us to pretend this never happened. She turned, her chest aching. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm ruining everything. His eyes locked on hers, fierce, almost desperate. No, they don't get to decide what's real for us. Tears blurred her vision. But what if I'm too weak? What if I can't fight them? Ren stepped closer, lowering his head until their foreheads nearly touched. His voice softened, stripped bare. Then let me fight for both of us. Just don't walk away. The door behind them creaked open. Another teacher, a sharp look, the unspoken warning of consequences. Ren pulled back instantly, his mask sliding into place again. That night, Aiko sat at her desk, homework untouched, while her father's angry words echoed from the living room. She thought of Ren's eyes, of the way his voice trembled when he asked her not to leave. In that moment, she realized the truth. This love had never been about fairy tales or happy endings. It was about survival, about finding something real in a world that demanded masks. The next morning, she would have to make